Welcome everyone. This is either our fourth or maybe fifth webinar in a series of different webinars where we've brought on a number of different guests to talk about a number of different topics. This webinar is going to be structured just a little bit differently. I'm here. My name's Matt McCann. I head up the sales team here at ShiftCare, and with me I have Conor Langlois. He is an account executive and a seasoned veteran in the space of home care, home health, as well as assisted living. And what we really wanted to do with today's webinar was, rather than bring on a guest and kind of go back and forth, we're going to continue to use that same format, but us ourselves, Conor, as well as myself, we've been in the space for a couple of years now and have learned a lot. We speak to anywhere from 10 to 15 different businesses in this industry on a weekly basis. And we thought it might be fun to just jump on here and talk about a couple of the core frustrations, as well as, challenges that we see in the space, and just share some of the insight. Conor and I have so many conversations off webinar that it just kind of made sense for us to maybe make some content around this and have some people join. We're also going to pull up the software and show how some of the challenges relate to ShiftCare and what it solves for with some of these things. So really the topics that we're going to be talking about is we're going to essentially be pulling the curtain back and doing a little bit of a deep dive into how ShiftCare really tackles caregiver turnover, administrative team burnout, and then some frustration for owners of the various businesses that we work with. And just talk to ShiftCare specifically around these challenges and how it solves. So with that said, Conor, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Matt. Thanks. And yeah, very excited for today's webinar, really just focusing on those challenges we hear every day, right? I think if we stacked it all up together, we're looking at a few thousand agencies between us we've talked to, heard challenges and frustrations, which has really helped drive not only the development of ShiftCare itself, in where we're headed, where we are now, and where we've been, but also excited to share some stories on the agencies we've supported and the stories we hear most often.
Absolutely.
Us, of course. And a couple housekeeping items here. Feel free to put any comments in the chat, but please stay on mute as we go through this. The session is being recorded. You'll get a copy of this recording after the fact. And you'll get our contact info if you have questions that we maybe didn't address. But please start putting them in the chat now, and we'll have some opportunities to address them as we go through this.
All right. Thanks, Conor. So jumping into our first topic, and you and I talk about this constantly. Let's talk a little bit about caregiver turnover. I'll start by kind of asking you, how often is this coming up? If you're running 10 meetings in a week, talking to 10 different agencies, how common is this going to come up?
I'm surprised when it doesn't come up. With an over 75% turnover rate in the industry today, it's front of mind for every agency, whether you have systems in place, whether you're new, established, the market's changing, what caregivers need is changing. And then we're also looking at different generational shifts within caregivers themselves. That just begs the question, how can I keep my caregivers and what can I do differently? What's Jason or Isabel doing down the street at their agency that I might not be doing to attract and keep my caregivers?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting when I talk to a lot of agencies, usually the first conclusion that they all make when I'm telling them about ShiftCare is that it's going to help them save some time as well as save some money, right? That's ultimately why people automate certain processes, is typically around streamlining that stuff, right? And with the end goal being that to save time and money. But the truth is, shift care is so much deeper than that. And that's why when we work with an agency, it's really about understanding a little bit more than just that. That might be challenging them on a daily basis. And I would say once we get a layer deeper, we always find out that the number one challenge that they're facing is caregiver turnover and not being able to hold on to incredible employees or simply just not being able to staff enough shifts that they have, right? And so when we talk about shift care, we'll dive into a little bit of a demo into like what areas in particular are going to help with that caregiver turnover. But Connor, in your experience talking to agencies, what would you say are like the top few items that come into play when trying to retain a caregiver or the challenges associated with trying to retain a caregiver?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so from all my conversations, I've gathered majority of the time, an agency typically works at multiple, or sorry, a caregiver works at multiple agencies at once, typically to fill like a comprehensive 40-hour week. Oftentimes, most agencies only have the availability to schedule a caregiver for certain hours. So a frustration for caregivers for sure are things like having enough hours and feeling supported. Couple other challenges I hear all the time is pay, of course, wanting to be paid more, wanting to feel heard, have enough hours, and be working with a good client that they really like.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely hear like not having enough shifts. We hear that all the time. And then in addition to that, just to kind of build on that, I would say I guess ease of providing care and understanding what the situation that you're actually walking into before it happens, right? So maybe a caregiver gets assigned a new client and having all the information before you walk into that person's home or if you're at a facility before you start working with that particular client. Um, Usually being misinformed on that type of information like impacts the experience of the caregiver in a very big way that can ultimately lead to turnover just because they're not feeling as comfortable as possible in the workplace, right? In addition to that, just streamlining the experience of taking their notes and the different tasks that they need to be able to do, making that as easy as possible is typically something that I see a lot of organizations struggle with. And I'll jump into the software in just a moment here, but Connor, do you have any specific stories of organizations that you've worked with recently that felt that this was just a major challenge?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Even just about 20 minutes ago, I was on with an agency who um, oftentimes have challenges when it comes to maintaining staff because they're losing them to big box offices like, or think big department type stores like the Targets, McDonald's. Because if you put it in perspective, right, being a caregiver, it's so challenging in that you don't have an on-site manager. Typically, there's not a ton of shadowing that exists. And I often hear that, especially this client I was just talking to up in Ontario, they have challenges when it comes to onboarding new caregivers,
Mhm.
especially like you said, not knowing exactly how this client works, not knowing exactly what needs to be done, and just having a lack of transparency around their responsibilities. That's all discussed on day one, but first shift showing up, having the tools and resources to do their job as best they can, it's hard to translate that when you don't have an owner or manager on site.
Definitely. And so before I jump in, I'll pose another question. What's like the number one, I guess, piece of functionality or impact that you think shift care can make when it comes to caregiver turnover? Like you get into a conversation with somebody, they explain to you that that is what they're trying to solve for. How do you explain to them what shift care, like what area of shift care do you think is like your go-to?
Yeah, yeah, good question. I would say the mobile app. And it's funny because when you say just one section of ShiftCare, it's so dynamic. We link everything from electronic visit verification, geolocated clock in, clock out, to the care plan itself, right? A caregiver in their app is going to see the care plan. They're going to get reminders of their shifts beforehand, see the ADLs that are mandatory as well as the ones that aren't, right? We're not just saying this is what you need to do today. This is what you can get done. And then they can also take a look at the goals that this client has for themselves, rate them against their goals as it relates to the care plan, and then see everything that has happened on previous shifts. So pretty dynamic, but a long answer short, the caregiver app, absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you said the caregiver app because that's what I'm prepared to show right now. There's no doubt that it's the most impactful piece of caregiver retention that ShiftCare offers. Like you said, there's a lot of other components that come into play, right? Especially when you talk about efficiency from admin, being able to do their job to the best of their ability, then allows for a much better experience for the caregivers. But they're the ones, they're going to be interacting with the mobile app, right? It's their whole experience. Um, so being able to provide a really strong experience through the mobile app, a really like streamlined experience, is incredibly important. So just jumping into a demo here of our mobile app. And Connor, just let me know that I'm sharing my screen correctly.
Yeah, that looks great.
Awesome. So you should be able to see my phone. This is my actual phone, so I apologize if I don't know, my mom texts me. But this is my actual phone. And in the background, you'll see the administrative side of ShiftCare. It connects to the mobile app. And so the mobile app is where your caregivers are they're gonna be interacting the most. And it's really easy to get them signed up. All it takes is an email. You just enter the email on the administrative side. They'll get an email to their personal email to create a password. Then they'll use that email as well as that password when they download the app in the App Store. It's really easy. You just type in ShiftCare. It's the first one that comes up. And they'll be able to download it. And then you can start assigning them shifts. So as far as like a couple different directions that we can go in, as a caregiver in our mobile app, we have our notification center, we have our schedule, we have our job board, which I'll get to in a second. They can see leave, any forms that are on their behalf, as well as any documents. So forms and documents are kind of two different things. They have incident reporting and then the document hub. As well as they're going to be able to receive notifications. I don't have mine turned on at the moment, but they can get notifications for reminders for when they have shifts coming up. So there's a couple different ways that they can utilize the app, a couple different directions they could go in. We'll start with the schedule before we kind of jump into the job board. I don't want to spend too much time, but I definitely want to show a little bit of what this experience looks like. So they're going to be able to view their schedule, and then they can even view, they get like a bigger calendar view if they want to be able to scroll around a little bit, maybe look ahead, a month ahead. A lot of organizations we work with try to get ahead with the schedule, but if we go ahead and click on a particular week, we can see all the shifts that have been booked for us. And if we click on this particular shift, you're going to see that it's a 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's a very long shift with Mr. Joey Tribbiani here. We'll get a bunch of different information. So for starters, at the top here, you'll notice that I can actually get directions. If I click on this map, it'll populate Google Maps and give me directions from where I'm standing right now on how to get to this particular location that the client's at. In addition to that, I obviously have the date, the time. And when I go ahead and I actually click on the client's name here, so if I go ahead and click on the client's name, it's going to give me some additional information. So a lot of organizations that we work with are trying to relay information about clients in a WhatsApp or over text, which not only is falling out of compliance, but it's just not all that efficient. I see some that try to use Google Drive as well and just have like open documents that the caregivers have access to. This is a secure way to transfer that information. They can only see information about a client that they have been assigned a shift for. And they'll be able to get some useful information. Do they have allergies? Do they have pets? How do they get into the home? a pretty popular one would be, were they recently discharged from the hospital? That type of information is extremely important in enhancing a caregiver's experience. And being able to provide that through the mobile app is something that a lot of agencies find a ton of value in. In addition to that, they'll have their contact information. So if, let's say, they're trying to maybe enter the home and they're having some trouble, they can always contact the client themselves. In addition to that, Conor had mentioned goals, as well as there's documentation. So if they need to take a look at care plans or anything like that, those are stored in the client's profile and then accessed by the caregiver through the mobile app. Now, in addition to that, in addition to being able to access that type of information, they can see any specific instructions that you'll notice here, and then any of their tasks as well. So you can actually have a running task list, and you can have the tasks set as mandatory. So the caregiver won't actually be able to clock out of the shift without being reminded that they have an outstanding task. So I see the tasks used a couple different ways. Sometimes it'll be tasks that people have to do, or like tasks that are required for this client, or sometimes it'll be like just an open set of tasks that they assign to every client. You just check off the ones that you did. So we see that used a couple different ways, but really being able to provide that experience for the caregiver where they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing every single time they show up for a shift, right? And then in addition to that, they'll be able to add any kind of progress notes, and you can have templates set up so that they know exactly what sort of prompts that you want them to answer. And they can even use dictation. So you can see down here, I've got my little microphone. Rather than needing to type in every single little detail, I can just talk into my phone while I'm working, which allows me to, execute my job while not having to worry so much about the notes the entire time, because it's just a really streamlined version of this. In addition to the progress notes, they can actually fill out specific forms. You'll see where it says shift related forms. So if there's anything specific that you needed somebody to fill out, it could actually be we could create a form in ShiftCare, or you can create a form in ShiftCare and then assign it to a client. And then every single time somebody is assigned that client, that form populates for them to complete. So we see the functionality used a lot of different ways. I'll pause here before I quickly just acknowledge the job board, because it's extremely impactful. Conor, what about the caregiver's experience here would you highlight as like a huge needle mover when it comes to value that the caregivers find?
Yeah, that's a good question, and something I was just talking about with an agency yesterday. Up-to-date information. So with this being so dynamic, not only is a caregiver going to know exactly what they need to get done, but they can feel confident that not only is this care plan actively being reviewed by the administrative team, but also this client, if there's any changes that happen, that's going to be updated in here automatically. So a caregiver being supported by knowing exactly what they need to do and feeling confident that, unlike a paper binder, right? Like this is actively reviewed by administrators. They can have that peace of mind in knowing this is what I need to get done today, and this is the best thing for my client.
Absolutely. And when we talk about delivering a higher standard of care, that absolutely comes into play here, right?
Yeah, and I just want to pause here real quick. For those of you in the webinar, feel free to type in the way that you're managing this right now. Would love to get some thoughts on how this looks, but mostly understand, what are you doing to help support your caregivers when it comes to understanding the care plan and what needs to be done.
Now, we had mentioned before when we were talking about just one of the number one reasons that caregivers typically will end up leaving an agency is they're not quite getting enough work, right? And oftentimes that comes from maybe not having the most efficient way for them to get extra work at an agency. Or maybe you're not initially assigning them enough shifts, but you actually do have enough shifts for them to retain them. Our job board, ShiftCare's job board, it's an internal job board that allows allows you the ability to push out any kind of open shift to either a group of staff members or your entire staff, that then they will get a push notification. So not necessarily like a text message. We do have SMS capability and chat capabilities, but it won't be a text message. Everyone's in group messages these days with their friends, with their family. They're getting 1,000 group messages a day. And we see a lot of organizations try to go that route and just not receive responses on open shifts. What ShiftCare is going to do is send out a push notification that is then going to inform the caregiver that this has to do with work. Every time they get a notification from ShiftCare, they know it has to do with work, and they'll be able to view that job board, and they'll be able to see any open shifts that are available to them on that job board. So all those shifts that are available on the job board, I'm trying to find an example here, but just to give you an example here through the administrative side, these purple shifts here are going to be shifts that are open on the job board that can be picked up. And you can actually post in there like how much the shift is getting paid out at, as well as some other descriptive details about what it's going to entail, maybe some of the tasks. And then you can either set it to approve automatically, or it can require approval. So you can have maybe like 5 different caregivers say, hey, I could go ahead and take that shift. And then you pick the one that's maybe the best fit, or the person who hasn't had quite enough work and hasn't been able to get enough shifts. But I think really the big value add here is the caregivers are able to get additional work extremely efficiently. Like they could be scrolling on Instagram like everyone does these days, and they could be scrolling on YouTube, and then that notification hits their phone and they can quickly pivot and immediately give you a response or immediately pick it up, or just constantly check the job board and be able to get those extra shifts so that you're not, running around trying to fill open shifts, as well as they're going to be happy because they're getting additional work, they're getting additional pay, and you'll have a better shot at retaining them.
Matt, how often does the job board come up in conversations with agencies from your experience?
Yeah, so in my experience, it's arguably one of the most impactful features that ShiftCare offers. And I would say it comes up in just about every single conversation, especially for an organization that's really in that growth mode, and an organization that sees the value in retaining their staff, right? Like when we talk about growth and we talk about an increase in revenue, continuing to be able to take more clients and impact more of your community, as well as that increase in revenue growth to keep a business healthy. The job board directly impacts that, right? Because it's going to go ahead and help your retention rate, which then is going to allow you to bring on more clients. So the more clients you bring on, the more revenue you make, the better the outreach, or the more outreach in your community that you have, or the more impact in your community, excuse me. And so it does come up constantly, and it's an extremely impactful piece of functionality that ShiftCare offers.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to pair that with a little story from this morning, I hear the same thing, Matt, all the time. It's coming up. This agency out in Texas, they were telling me they pay for an automated phone system that goes ahead and calls all of their caregivers when there's an open shift, which, that being a good idea, right? Typically, the natural response when you need a shift filled is to reach out to your staff, but they were getting a ton of negative feedback from their caregivers on just being overrun by texts, by phone calls, group chats. Whereas this, all being in the same place, shift care, that means money, dollars, and hours towards their work, their pay. It all being streamlined into those shift care notifications really improve the quality of the care that's being provided, but also made sure those caregivers are feeling supported, right? And heard in that change that they wanted to see.
Yeah, that's a really good example there. Switching gears real quick, kind of a hard transition into the other topics, which are admin burnout as well as owner frustration. They kind of go hand in hand, right? Because for all the listeners out there, we wear a lot of hats in the home care space. When it comes to running an agency, every single owner that I talk to plays a role in the admin, as well as the admins are communicating with the owners. It's kind of all bundled into one, and really the burnout associated with these admins as well as the owners is incredibly high. We see a lot of people that come to their boiling point essentially, and they really just need some help streamlining some of these processes that they're trying to execute manually. Um, Connor, what specifically are we talking about when we talk about the different processes that might be causing admin burnout?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely not a one word answer type of question. Every agency, I think of it like a snowflake in terms of the way they're set up. Administrators have so much to deal with, whether it's managing staff, making sure people are paid appropriately, make sure clients are being seen and communicated with. And then also, the overarching goal, which often gets put to the side or the back burner, is providing a super high quality standard of care, right? That's why most people come start work in this industry. So I'd say it's a lot more about managing different ecosystems, whether it's, yeah, paying people correctly, getting paid, managing care. And that's where ShiftCare really helps out by linking those different processes together all in one place.
Yeah, I think I mean, you just said it right there at the end. Being able to link all those processes and like sync everything up, right? Is I think everyone in every industry out there right now is really trying to um, find a like a holistic solution. So you see a lot of people that if there's not like a software specific to their industry that can do everything, they're trying to link a lot of stuff together. And this industry in particular is definitely like that, right? They're trying to link a lot of different things together versus solutions similar to ShiftCare that are out there, or ShiftCare specifically, that are going to be a more holistic solution for them, right? And I think that can become a very frustrating thing for an owner or an admin and start to lead to that burnout that we're talking about, just because there's frustration around not having streamlined processes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and really like the biggest challenge is things slipping through the cracks and then also the time it takes to get these different systems to talk to each other. We're talking hours and hours of manual entry for most agencies. Whereas I'll just pull up my screen here and jump back into the software. But one place that I think really does a good job of highlighting how all these systems connect is in the invoicing side of things. So um, most agencies traditionally working off of manual systems will have to review timesheets, right, to get the accurate clock in, clock out time when a client should be billed. They're going to have to review the agreement with that client, right? How many dollars per hour are we charging for the services we're offering? Reviewing the notes, making sure that the high standard of care was actually delivered. Were there call outs? Did someone need to leave or cancel early? And then of course you can't keep scheduling shifts unless those same caregivers are getting paid. So one thing I want to point out is in our invoicing functionality, this is really the the crux of where so many different pieces of the software come together. So when it comes to generating invoices, and just for example, this is going to be private pay. Same thing applies for long-term care insurance, MCOs, and then Medicaid. Same thing. It's just going to look a little different for Medicaid. But what we're going to do is just choose an a issuer due date, the time frame we're looking at, and then generate invoices. So instantly, everything's being pulled together here. All of the timesheets, all of the care notes, all of the dollar value associated with the care being provided for this specific client with this specific care type. And then if we view this report here for Freddie Mercury, you'll see we have all of the shift related data, and we can actually download a detailed view that is going to give us everything that's happened with this client during this pay period, right? So the progress notes that Matt was talking about pulled directly from that caregiver app, the tasks that were completed. We can even capture mandatory client signatures. You'll see start and finish time that can also be reflected in the clock in, clock out time with the cost total and the running total. So this really brings it all together for administrators when it comes to making things easy. Um, and then just to add to this, a huge task of most administrators is maintaining clear communication with clients and their families. And one thing we have that's going to help on that front automatically is a family portal where they can see all scheduled shifts. They're going to see all care notes like we were talking about, but then they'll also see invoices due. So just a huge step for most agencies being automated. It has been so helpful for our clients, with also this additional level of transparency.
Yeah, and the thing that I've noticed when I typically show uh this report to an agency is oftentimes what like helps them and what makes them find it so useful is typically, after shifts occur, there'll be questions around what happened after the shift, right? Either from family members or the client themselves. And there'll be like a lot of back and forth between either like a care coordinator or administrator of some kind. There'll be a lot of back and forth with the client or the family of the client, trying to like understand if everything that was supposed to get done got done and if it was reported correctly. And this specific documentation right here really just hits the nail on the head where you could just send it out. You could send it straight to the party that needs to see it, and they could confirm that everything that was done was supposed to be. It pairs really well with an invoice because it kind of backs up everything that's on the invoice. And it's an easy way to track and make sure that everything that this higher standard of care is being provided, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Having that quality assurance, right? That what you paid for happened is so important. And I actually have had clients give me a call, where they told me, "Hey, Connor, what you showed me in the demo, I really appreciated you sending me that recording because I show the same thing to new clients that I'm bringing on board, right? Showing them that if you work with me, I'm going to provide this level of oversight that you're going to have on a daily basis. And then when it's time to pay, you'll know exactly what happened."
Yep, definitely. And I did see a question pop in the chat just around Family Portal and access to progress notes. Um, so something that's really nice about the ShiftCare Connect and the Family Portal is you can't actually, there's permissions associated with it. So if you didn't want the family to be able to see the progress notes, because those are strictly internal, you can block that. You don't have to give that permission. However, you can if it's something that you want the family involved in.
Absolutely.
All right. And we're getting close to our time here. Just before we get into Q&A, Connor, can we maybe just conclude a little bit of what we've spoken about as far as the caregiver retention piece, as well as the admin frustration and the owner frustration? I guess, what would you say are like the three biggest takeaways from if you want someone to leave this webinar, what are like the two or three biggest takeaways that you would want them to have?
Yeah. So for one, and something we didn't even mention, ShiftCare, the reason we exist is someone who was providing care saw that there was a gap in the softwares and services available to best support them. So ShiftCare from its core has been a system built by agencies to support agencies. And all of this feedback we get goes back into the product so that when it comes to managing your caregivers, managing the care, as well as your agency. All of these tools are built with feedback to make sure it's as easy as possible to link all these systems together and have a high level of transparency as well as ease of use, so that you can really get back to providing that high quality of care. Um, Second thing I would add is the the connection of ecosystems, both for caregivers and the admin team. There's a lot of work that goes into payroll, invoicing, care notes, care plans, care management. That's typically siloed. And what we've done is really just pull them all together to make it as easy as possible to get back to, like I said before, providing that high quality of care.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna open up, and I can see there's actually a couple questions in the chat right now. We're gonna open up for just like a quick couple minutes of Q&A before we wrap it up here. And I'll just before we get into the Q&A, I'll just say thank you to everyone for joining. I know this was like a quicker webinar, but just wanted to hop on here and make sure have a little discussion with Conor here about some value that we talk about every day with different agencies, and just kind of share that amongst the community. And so just jumping into our first question here, and I think I could take this one, Conor, but it's is there a way to track hours of employees on the administrative side? Oh yeah. So definitely, the platform can actually absolutely track the different hours. And let me just pull my screen back up. Conor, I'm going to take the screen away from you again. And so obviously we have our timesheets functionality where you'll be able to track all the timesheets, but I'm assuming I'm going to answer this question as though, is there like an obvious place to track hours? And if you look at my screen right now, I've got all my staff members on the left-hand side here, and underneath each of their names is the number of hours set for the given period of time that I have my scheduler set to. So I can actually track all the hours. If we move this over to a weekly view, let's say you're tracking all the hours for the week. I could see here that I have Jerry Seinfeld. He's got 30 hours for the week. And then I have Estelle Costanza with 43 hours. And you can see Estelle's 43 hours are flashing red at me. That's because she's kicking into overtime. Oftentimes, we see a lot of organizations that are either trying to pay out more overtime to help retain their staff, or they're trying to avoid paying out overtime because they can't quite afford to do it yet. Really simple way right on the scheduler to see how many hours everyone has set for that particular week. And I could even take somebody like Elaine Bennis here that only has 6 hours of work, and maybe I can allocate some of Estelle Costanza's hours towards Elaine's so that I can really kind of even things out in a way that's going to allow me to retain more of my staff. All right, I think we got time for one more question. Let's see. Conor, I'm going to give this one to you. Is there any particular piece of functionality in ShiftCare that you think is more impactful or just as impactful as the job board? So I think it's a good one for you, Conor, because I already gave my opinion that I think the job board is arguably the most impactful. Is there anything else that you would highlight?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because the job board not only tackles the difficulty for administrators to fill last minute shifts, but also makes it easy for caregivers to take on more hours, right? Stay working at the agency and feel supported. Another one that I would point out that I think is really super impactful, and one that we've got a lot of positive feedback on, is this dashboard here at the top. So just above the scheduler, this again is a tool that links multiple things together. I think about this as the real-time data center for administrators and schedulers, right? Typically, what we see in the live in moment when, let's say, a caregiver gets a flat, or they're not able to make it to a shift last minute, or their phone dies, is they typically wait for a client to give them a call. if someone doesn't show up to a shift. So what this dashboard does, it actually gives you a live view of new incidents so you can address them as quickly as possible. Late clock ins, late clock outs, which are just as important. Forms awaiting review, and then shifts canceled today by staff and by clients. So right here, you can go ahead and address challenges instantly. You're going to get updates. I recommend most of our clients keep this page open as they're working, getting things done. And then additionally, we can take a more strategic look at our agency and how we're performing when it comes to our clients and staff. So shift utilization, right? Assigned hours versus contracted, vacant hours versus availability. So taking that job board a step further and helping fill your caregivers' schedules based on their vacant hours. That's super huge, as well as tracking things like shift cancellations and late clock in trends. Um, Oftentimes I hear, caregiver of the month is usually the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, right? The person who's the most showy in the way that they're performing. What this dashboard's going to do, it's going to really highlight for you who are your caregivers that are always showing up, picking up shifts last minute, taking those last minute shifts, and then who's consistently maybe needing a little bit of a helping hand, showing up a little late or clocking out late. This is really going to help you dial in your workforce and use them more effectively to deliver that high quality care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting when you talk about a dashboard like this. We live in a world now that this data is available. Like people track these types of things and it can be tracked now. And so why wouldn't you use it to your advantage, right? And be a little more data driven around the performance of your employees and the performance of your organization in general. So I think that's a great point, and I agree with you, Connor. I believe it's extremely impactful. Um, Awesome. All right. I see there are a couple more questions in the chat. We are short on time at the moment. So we'll look to answer, we'll send something else out to everyone who attended with some answers to some of the additional questions, as well as you can always book a demo with our team. If you're looking to learn a little bit more, just go to our website. You should be able to just book a demo. It'll be like it's one of the first things you'll see when you go to the ShiftCare, the US site or Canadian site. But thank you everyone so much for attending. Connor, thank you for joining me and chatting this out. And your insight is always incredibly helpful and extremely calculated. So I really appreciate that. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.